Hi, I'm Sam McAdam and welcome to Air Chats with Air Max. Our next guest is a former Royal Air Force fighter pilot and England rugby player. From winger to wingman, we welcome Rory Underwood. Mr. Rory Underwood.
Oh, that's very formal.
Rory.
That's better.
Welcome to Air Chats with Air Max. Thanks very much for joining us today. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I feel really good, thank you.
Right, a few months ago we had Mike Bannister on the show, Chief Pilot of Concorde.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to him he has to have one of the coolest job titles that there is, but I think we've got a contender.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Royal Air Force fighter pilot and an England rugby player.
Yeah.
Where did this all start?
Well, there's two parts to that, obviously. So I suppose it all starts with my interest in flying, because flying came first before the rugby. Primarily because I was an product of an expat family, dad from Middlesbrough. Went and worked out in Malaysia, met my mum, local girl, and the result was me in number one of four. And we started going to boarding school at about the age of 8 or 9, something like that. We went to Barnard Castle up north because that was close to where my grandparents were in Middlesbrough, and I was born in Middlesbrough. And we used to fly backwards and forwards 3 times a year between Teesside Airport in the old days of Viscounts and British Midlands, flying down to London, Terminal 1, transferring to Terminal 3, and then getting onto from the early days of my childhood of VC-10s, be like 4 or 5 stops between London and KL. We used to go, hour and a half, hour 45 minutes to 2.5 hour flights, hops all the way to KL. And the sort of transiting thing is so different to what it is now. Literally they just gave you a plastic card. So that was the same aircraft you came back on. And that was the security. That was it. Not that there was much in the departure lounge. It was very, basic. But then when I started going to boarding school, we used to go 3 times a year, obviously, to go back to school holidays. And to begin with, it was just a flight going home. And then it became it's quite interesting looking out the window, seeing what's happening. But then once you get airborne, it's just sky and a bit of ground and not a lot. And it was that intrigue about what it actually looked like out the front. So I started, what's it like when you get airborne, and what's it like when you come into land, and actually seeing where you're going in the aircraft. And that's where it piqued my interest. And, I remember I was living in Singapore with a family, and I used to write to all the airlines asking for information about the aircraft and, drawing their tail fin things and stuff as a young kid. And so that was my interest. And then when I went to school, I joined the CCF Cadet Force, and I joined the RAF section, because by this stage I was starting to think I wanted to become a pilot. I mean, originally I was going to think about becoming a BA pilot, but you needed a degree in those days to go and qualify for to go and do a ATPL training course. And I wasn't sure I was going to be clever enough to go and get a degree to go and do that. And so in the end, it was the Air Force option. And it wasn't until I joined the main school at 11 at Barnard Castle that they started playing rugby. And that's when I learned how to play rugby. Because before that was football and other sports, but it's mainly football. Because I used to play.
Middlesbrough?
No, at that stage, just at school.
But supporting you.
Well, I mean, at that stage, crikey, you know what kids are like. At 11, I think, when did I change? Yeah, so at 11, I started supporting Leeds because they were the team. In the early 70s, Leeds were like, the Manchester Cities of the time. Mm-hmm. I used to support them. I was 10, 11, 12. So, and I'd probably been earlier than that. But anyway, I can remember they lost to Sunderland in the final, and that was it. I thought, oh, crikey, you lose to second division side, what's it? So I gave up, And then I thought, why am I supporting Leeds? It's not, yes, I'm a Yorkshireman because I was born in Middlesbrough, but I'm not, I don't have an affinity with Leeds per se. So ever since then, I would have said, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 or something. I thought, well, I'll follow Middlesbrough. I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm a devout supporter, but I do follow them and I watch the scores. And so I'm a football distant supporter for Middlesbrough. But it was just playing with your brother in the back garden was football wise, right. Just, as you do. But then at the age of 11, this is a rugby pitch. These are scrums. These are line outs. Pass the ball backwards, and here's a ball, odd-shaped ball. And that's how I started playing rugby.
That aviation link comes from these holidays to Malaysia.
The interesting thing is, they say holidays, but it's like I was just going home.
Yeah.
And when you look back now, and at the time I'm going home. I'm done school, so I'm going back home. So Easter term was like 3 weeks.
Oh, you were living out there?
Yeah, my mum and dad were living there, yeah.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought you were all here and you were going...
No, I say my mum and dad met my mum out there, and we were living out there. So that's why we were travelling 3 times a year.
Okay, so going home.
Crikey, you have the 3 holidays to Malaysia in those days. That would have been really, fun.
That would be nice. I mean, confusion came. I'm half Polish, so actually we used to do the whole, I guess, like going home as well, my mum's side, to go see the family there. But yeah, you're on aircraft frequently, so your love for aviation is born that way. But rugby, you just fell into.
I suppose it's fate. I mean, I ended up going to Barney Castle School because they had to send me to a boarding school, or us to a boarding school. And obviously it made sense to send it somewhere where it's close to relatives. So that, I mean, you have, long weekends or ex-yats and stuff. And also the getting the kids from school to an airport to get us back. It made sense to be up near them. Barney Castle was one of the closest schools, either Barney Castle or Durham School. So they chose Barney Castle. And, I can remember myself and my brother, we were like 9, 10. I can remember when we did it when the first time I went to school. So I was 11, he would have been 10 or 9. But our grandma used to take us to the bus up from North Ormsby up to Middlesbrough bus station. She'd then make sure you went on the right bus to get from there to Darlington. And we went to Darlington bus station. Then we'd make sure we get on the next bus to then get to Barney Castle. So, and then eventually, once we'd done it a few times, she let us loose on our own, going to school. That's what it was like in those days.
Brilliant. Well, if it hadn't worked out with aviation and rugby, I guess you'd have been good at logistics.
Yeah. It's one way of putting it, yeah. So, that was the reason why I went to Barney Castle. And of course, it's a rugby playing school. So fate fell into whatever you think it was. But rugby was that because of going to school that did that. And obviously I went to a boarding school that had a CCF cadet force and it had an RAF section in it. So that helped as well.
Okay, well, there's obviously going to be a discussion about both things. It's an aviation podcast, but I'd be slated if I didn't cover rugby as well. There's two points. You've gone to the cadets, and you're also at a rugby playing school, but not everyone would have become a commissioned officer fighter pilot, and not everyone would have gone on to play pro. Was there anyone else from your school that ended up going pro?
No, well, I didn't go pro, really. I was a semi-pro towards the end, but you remember when I was playing, the game was an amateur game.
I think at this point I need to address what I said to you earlier, which is I know very little about rugby.
I know. So I'll just leave one unstat in your head. So the game didn't turn fully professional until 1995.
Okay.
So once we start talking about my Air Force career and stuff, you'll understand that there's no way I could have played as a full-time pro while I was a serving RAF pilot. But I was at school at the same time as Rob Andrew. So Rob and I both played for England. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't pro, but he played the same standard. He played for Nottingham and Wasps, and he played for England. And we both started school in the same house at the same time. So Rob and I have known each other since we were 11, playing rugby together at school and then onwards into England. So we've known each other since, 73, something like that. A long time. So yeah. That's the thing to bear in mind, is that the game was an amateur game.
Right. Thank you.
It's all right.
So Royal Air Force.
Yep.
At that time then, as a cadet, what's the route into...
So being a cadet is like a very, very... it's actually quite a useful methodology for the Air Force. And obviously there's the Army section, or you've got the ATC cadets, or you've got the Army cadets. There are various ways that the military try and introduce the services to young children and adults to understand what the Air Force is about. So you join, I think it was about the third year. So it's about 14, 15, something like that you join, that you could start, like third year at school. That's my old school, third year. Mm-hmm. And you'd basically every sort of Wednesday afternoon, you'd go and do various things. So at the school, we had one of these quite sort of gliders. It was just basically a frame sort of, I don't know how to describe it. So it was like a frame of the fuselage, and then it had a wing that we used to screw on top of it, a high plane over the top of the fuselage. And it had the tail at the back, and it had a huge, massive bungee cord. And we used to take over the sort of middle bit of the playing fields, and all the Air Force cadets, each part would get a turn, and we had the brakes on, or it was being held, and then they would all pull the bungee, and then you try it. And if it got airborne, it would get airborne a foot off the ground or something, but it was fundamentally trying to keep the wings level when it was going forward. So you used to do 100 meters at a time sort of thing, roughly. So that's the early sort of introduction to that sort of stuff. We'd often go and do navigation, reading maps and various standard sort of thing you'd expect from a point of view of aviation. But then every summer, the Air Force, I'm not as au fait with the Army and the Navy, but in the Air Force, there'd be designated Air Force camps that would have cadets that would go and visit. And so, for a period of 4 weeks, there'd be, 12 or 15, whatever it was, schools or cadets would come and basically spend a week. So you'd come and you just go and visit all the different parts of the station. If you're lucky, you could get a flight, but you go and visit all the different parts of the station. And so it was a chance to you to actually go and see what the Air Force is all about and see all the different parts of the Air Force, the different sections, ATC, supply, et cetera, et cetera. And you did, they'd do competitions and building rafts and all the different things you'd expect to do with that sort of type of thing. So I did three. I went to Cosford, Whitton, and Waddington in my time during those 3 years. And every now and then, if the flying fitted, you sort of could go and do a flight in a Chipmunk or equivalent, and everybody gets a chance to go flying. And it was a way to introduce it to people. So that obviously added to my desire. Being at a private school in Barney, we also had a wing commander Biddy, I'll never forget his name. He was like a RAF liaison officer. Right. And he would be tasked in a certain area to go to all the schools. And anybody who was keen on joining the Air Force, he would have a chat with them and talk about what you want to do, how you're doing it, and offer any words of advice and various things. And so I remember having a chat with him fairly early on with expressing my interest. And so from that, an interest, then the first thing you did was called a test in advance in our day. So it was literally you went down for a day and a half. You went down, did a medical, did some aptitude tests, and some very basic interviewing type stuff. And from that, they could assess you from simplicity. Do you have the aptitude to be a pilot, aircrew, or whatever, something else? And medically, it's an early stage of telling you, well, sorry, you're colorblind, or you've got astigmatism or whatever. And then, sorry, you're not going to be able to do aircrew, etc. So that was the first step. I did one of those and I got through that. And then I applied for a flying scholarship. And that was a real sort of taster of really getting into it. So I applied for and got, and so two of us in my school actually got it. We went down to Marshall's at Cambridge. Okay. And we went for a 4-week time. So we just put them in a B&B just near Cambridge. And we pretty much walked, got the bus from there to the airport. And we were in the flying club there. And we were, the scholarship gave us 30 hours of getting towards your PPL. And when you finished that, it was like 5 hours left. And if you wanted to, you could pay for the extra 5 hours, a few final things and a final handling test. And then they would give you your PPL. So you did your sort of theory sort of type stuff. And then you just do your Morse code and that sort of stuff, and RT tests. And so I got my PPL, I think it was at 16. So I was obviously, lower 6, or I think it was the summer between 5th form and lower 6. So I got that. And then obviously leading through 6th form was building up to then applying to join. So that was the process I went through.
So you were hooked. And at that point, did you know this is what I want to do?
Fairly, yeah, that was the plan. By the time I started doing testing advance and flying scholarship, I decided that I wanted to join the Air Force. There's a variety of reasons. I didn't think I was going to get a degree. So to go that way and, try and go through the course. And in those days, like 60 grand just to go and do a basic, frozen CPL.
Commercial, yeah.
Yeah. And so I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that. So the Air Force was the way. And, the Air Force sort of recruitment videos worked on me. I can remember vividly these this sort of short 2-minute sort of video about these two Jaguar pilots and flying around and whatever. And there were two comments that came out from that. Well, one comment from the Jaguar that was as they were flying around low level through the valleys, saying, you can't really do a loop the loop in the jumbo jet. And another one was a Phantom crew, and it was more of a poster actually, where it said, it was claggy weather, overcast, and they're stood on top of their Phantom just about to get into it, saying Met says it's clear above 54,000 feet. So those sort of things really, really hit home with me, and I thought, what, I think that's the way to go. And so, yeah, that's what drove me towards joining the Air Force.
But you didn't have a particular type that you wanted to fly. You were just
Jag. I wanted to fly Jag.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So you wanted fast jet.
I wanted fast jet, 100%. I wanted to go fast jet, and the Jag, to me, I just loved the look of it. That's the one I wanted to go. Single seat, so I put myself a difficult, to go single seat. You've got to be sort of, one of the better students going through. Mm-hmm. But that was the reason why I joined. Yeah.
But you can't choose, can you?
No, you can. You can choose. You can suggest.
You suggest what you want.
But where they stream you is a totally different thing altogether. Yeah.
Who does say I want to be rotary? I mean, I'm just thinking how many pilots that join the Royal Air Force don't want fast jet.
Well, during my time, I wouldn't say most people end up trying to go fast jet. So you tend to find in my time that a lot of rotary and multi-engine would be, people who've tried going through the system but haven't got the aptitude. So potentially some of them could sort of go, yeah, he probably won't make fast jet, but he's good enough to be a pilot, whatever, push him through, and the system will just work. It'll filter the people that are more predicated to having the skill set to either fly multi-engines and or rotary, as opposed to Group 1, which is obviously fast jet.
Yeah, and you've managed to do it.
Yeah.
So your favourite aesthetically, I guess, at that time was Jaguar.
Yeah.
Mine was, and I said this actually to Joe Salter, was Tornado. Mm-hmm. Why don't you like the Tornado? Or do you? Because that's...
No, just because I like one doesn't mean I don't like the others. It was just simple that. But when I was joining, so this would be sort of mid to late 70s, the Tornado was a multi-role combat aircraft, the MRCA, which was called when it first started. And I remember doing the CCF days and various things, and this aircraft was being talked about and various things. So it was very embryonic, but the Jag was already out. So for me, it was purely and simply about, and of course, when you're that kid, you only know so much about it, but it's just the look of it. It looked sleek, it looked punchy, it looked, when you're flying around at a level, it really stood out to me. And the thing is, if you've been up close, if you compare a Tornado and a Jaguar and put them side by side, Tornado's built on steroids. It really is, and then you compare a Tornado with a Typhoon. Typhoon's got nice curves and aesthetically pleasing to the eye. The Tornado GR1 is not the prettiest aircraft.
I was thinking GR4.
Well, they're both the same. It's just the upper iterative. So they're both the same in size. Basically, a GR1 and GR4 is shorter by about a meter and a half than the F3 or F2, F3. And the F3 has got the extra fuel tank behind the Navigator. And that stretch just gives it that extra nice sort of look to it, where the GR1 and GR4, it looks stubby. It's got short fuselage with a massive tail. Whereas with the F3, it's just because the fuselage, it sort of balances itself a bit more against. Well, that's my view. That's my look. Obviously, the GR1 and GR4 mates against the F3s will have their fights with each other. But that was it, So what was the journey like to fast jet? Well, ups and downs as anything. I went through officer training. So that was February 83. Graduated 15th of June. So the 5th. So 10 days time. So was that 83? Flipping heck. Was that 41 years ago? Is that right? I might be wrong. Yeah, 41 years ago. So got through officer training, and I was posted to Cromwell, which is no surprise. The Air Force obviously recognised that keep Underwood close to some good clubs in the Midlands, and I'd been invited by Middlesbrough to go. How much is behind the scenes going stuff? I know some stuff, but not all of it. So how much was being done in the background regarding rugby, I don't know. By this stage, well, I'll give you a clue. The Air Force knew I was joining, and they knew that I was, a prized rugby player. By the time I joined the Air Force in February, I'd already played for England B. I've been on the bench for an England trial. So the powers that be knew that I was a a good rugby player. I turned up at Cranwell February the 13th, 1983, as you do on a Sunday night, green, cheap suit, that sort of stuff. And then Monday, walking around, getting your clothes and signing attestation and testing to the Queen and country and all that sort of stuff. And sometime in the afternoon, I got called in to speak to the wing commander. And he called me and said, right, Underwood, tomorrow at 4:00, you are to report to your billet with clothes for 2 days and your rugby kit. Okay. And so the next day I turned up, my thing went ready there. I met a Flight Lieutenant Stacey, who was a mod plod, or RAF police, red cap. And he picked me up, took me in the back car, drove me from Cranwell all to Bodisford. It was a little small town just outside of Grantham. And dropped me at his house, which was Nigel Gillingham's house, who was the then Captain of the Royal Air Force. He was Flight Lieutenant Gillingham. And he was based there. He was based at Newton, I think. Spent the night at his house. Next morning at stupid o'clock, jumped in a car, drove to Nottingham. We jumped on the train and we got a train all the way down to Plymouth. Took us most of the morning and into the afternoon. Got out, went to this training field. My memories of it being just like in the middle of a, top of a sort of domains somewhere high above Plymouth. And it was just like blowing a gale and it was all that sort of stuff. Met the RAF rugby team, had a few training runs with them, got changed. That night we played against Plymouth Albion, 7:45 kickoff. Playing against Plymouth, I can always remember it because we lost to a penalty in like 7th minute of extra time or something. Stayed in the wardroom even though I was officer cadet, I stayed in the wardroom at Plymouth. Next morning, jumped on the train, got a train back to Nottingham, then got, I think somebody, I can't remember who it was, MT or somebody picked me up and dropped me off at Cranwell. And I walked back into my billet at Thursday at 4:00 to see my flight sergeant with my flight, going through some ironing, teaching how to iron, stuff like this. So my first week in the Air Force, I missed 2 days in my first week of the Air Force. So the Air Force already knew I was, a rugby player and a good one. And I had another time I had to get off because of, I played in the inter-services. So there's a couple of times I had to miss a couple of exercises for a few days and things like that. So that was my taster. So they knew that was the case. So when I got posted post officer training, I was sent to Cranwell, which I think they were thinking, right, I think he's going to join Leicester. So it makes sense to leave him at Cranwell, which is close, because the other two options were Linton on Ouse and Church Fenton up in Yorkshire. So I got a letter from Graham Willars, who was the then Tigers coach. I hadn't known that the Leicester boys, the Middlesbrough boys, which I'd been playing, I played 5 years for Middlesbrough. A few of them knew a lot of the guys down at Tigers. Okay. And they said, look, he's joining the Air Force and he's down your way. You might want to pick him up. So that's why I got that's the way it worked in those days, And so I went down training. So I started training with them, August 83, and then stayed with the club for 14 years. And so I'll talk about flying now. So that was the rugby, but that's the link between the two. And then so I started basic flying training. And again, like anything, I'm not somebody who can cram and then regurgitate it. That's not my style of learning. So I'm much more hands-on, kinesthetic, and seeing it and doing it, then it sticks in. And so the style of the Air Force was very much about giving you lots of information because, we had to learn about mech engineering, electrical, aerodynamics, meteorology, about navigation, about maps, and all the different things you need to know. So there's a lot of stuff you've got to cram into. So you've got all the different sections. So we would, in the lessons, keep doing that. Objective based, you just had to regurgitate information. Now when I look back, you learn more now. Look at all the objectives, just learn those answers, and then you've got all the information you need to answer the questions. But I struggled, and I failed my ground school. So when I eventually exam, I failed it, and the powers that be decided to recourse me. So they ended up putting me back a course to the next ground school starting, and I started again and did it again. Which for me was, because you start on the course, you start to get to know the people on the course, and you start being, you have that sense of course spirit, esprit de corps, and then suddenly you get taken out and put into a new lot and meet a new bunch of guys. But, eventually I settled down, got through the ground school, and started my flying training with the Jet Provost Mark V. And you can always tell it's a Cranwell So it makes the nerdy ones above these. So you can always tell it's a Cranwell Jet Provost, partly A, because it's a 5, but Church and Linton also had 5s, but because it had a blue band around the fuselage. So a very light blue band around the fuselage. That was Cranwell's aircraft. And the difference between the 3s, which they had at Linton and Church. So a lot of the guys at Linton and Church would start on the JP3 and then convert onto the 5 when they were rolled fast jet. For us, we were doing JP5s all the way through. The main difference is pressurized cockpit.
Okay.
And so an electric cockpit on the 5, which is the slide backs and forwards, whereas on the JP3, it was a on track on wires, and you literally had a handle like the old window, car windows. You had to turn that. It was like that
to shut the canopy.
Yeah. So you do that, and then you literally would then put a lug would then stick into a hole. So it's just a physical restriction. I remember there was a famous, the guys used to tell me, there was one instructor who was famous for doing this, used to say, so he's fully strapped in. Yes, sir. Are you sure, sir? Okay. So he said, right, undo the canopy. So wind the canopy open, and he would turn the aircraft upside down and then fly level. And of course, obviously, eventually you would drop, because the negative G was the one that people forgot to do. So it's a 5-point harness.
Right.
So you got 2 hips, 2 shoulder. And then you've got the negative G between the legs, in front of the seat pan handle, ejection seat handle. And if you didn't pull that one down, obviously you turn upside down and there's always an inch or 2 of drop. And of course, when you're at 15, 20,000 feet.
Okay. I was picturing you were still on the ground here. And also, I know a little bit about aviation, but not this level, especially when it comes to fast jet. And if there's people listening that this has just gone straight over their head, I think we kind of need to picture the scene here. You've got...
So the JP3 had ejection seats. So right. The box standard Mark IV ejection seat. Okay, ejection seat, you pull handle, it goes bang, and it chucks you out of the aircraft. And when you start flying, obviously, you need to make sure you got your harnesses in correctly. And so one of the points that the instructor used to make was when he went flying around was to say, is your harness in properly, and have you tightened it up properly? And he would always turn upside down to make sure.
That's the sort of thing you imagine happening in a comedy film.
Well, to a certain extent, but it's just a way of proving the point.
What speed are you doing then? Because you're getting blasted with air.
No. It's like a convertible, because you got the windscreen in front of you. So okay, the front of it and the canopy does that.
Yeah, no, we do it in a car on the motorway, and you're still going to get blasted with air. Doing it in an aircraft.
No, not unless you stick your head above the. So in a cabriolet, you've got a windscreen. So when you're sat in the car, the wind ruffles your hair a little bit, but you don't get the full blast of doing 70 miles on the motorway because the air goes over the top. Yeah, if you stuck your head above the windscreen, then you get blasted by 70 miles an hour winds. So you weren't getting, there's a little bit of buffeting the wind. You'd be doing, in that thing, you're probably doing 150, 200 knots.
It's still bizarre. And what a great, I imagine if you haven't strapped yourself in properly, you won't do it again.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the seat will move. I mean, if you do it as tight as possible, it'll still move a bit. It's like anything else. If you've ever done abseiling.
Yes.
When you first get in the harness and you go to the bit where you go, I've got to get the tension.
Well, I never trust it, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's always that inch, 2 inch, or whatever, just to wait for the tension to take, where that 2 inches feels like it's not going to happen and it's not caught and you're just going to fall to your death. It's just like that, that 1 inch or 2 inch of not having that tension makes you feel. So it was just a way of his point. I mean, nothing's going to come to any harm, but it was this way of making point that you had your.
No, I love it. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't be able to do it these days.
Well, yeah, somebody might complain, but we won't go there.
Yeah, times have changed, but that's.
So anyway, we digress, and that's the fun of doing something like this. But I can't remember the exact times. It was something like basic flying training on the Jet Provost was like 100, I want to say 50, possibly 60, 70, something like that hours. So you do the first 110, 20 hours, something like that, I think it was. And you get to a certain point where they have done all the instrument flying techs. You can fly in bad weather, and you've done a final sort of intermediate final handling test in IFHT or whatever it is, which at that point they then rolled you. So that was the term roll. So it comes back to the question you originally asked me. So they then roll you, and the instructors are looking for certain things around the skill sets you've got. So as us pilots, there are some that are much better at flying accuracy and reading instruments, some better at the more dynamic, mathematical, mental dead reckoning of flying around, mapped to what you see on, out your eyeball, all that sort of stuff. And for rotary, it's difficult to know what that skill set is, but maybe more handling and various things because you're obviously low to the ground. But they can see those sort of parameters and skill sets they're looking for. So when they see you going through the program, they'll know that you're suited to one or the other. And so at the end of that course, we started with about, 10 of us? I think from my mob, I think it was like maybe two or three went multis and one went rotary, and the rest of us went down Group 1, Phase 1 into the next phase. So at that point, we, as the ones going fast jet, we had another 40 hours plus or minus to do. We started doing more formation and low-level flying and stuff like that. The multi-engine guys would go off and do more high-level navigation type stuff and looking in airways and that sort of stuff. And the rotary would literally do 5-10 hours, if that, just certain stuff before they went off to Shorebury. So that was the phase that we started having people leaving the course if they weren't chopped, I failed, the course. So the helicopter guys went off to Shorebury to do, the helicopter training. And the multi-engine guys went to Finningley to then go through multi-engine training on the the Jetstream, as was. And us, we stayed and did that, got to the end and did a fire handling test, tick. We're off to Valley. So that's basic flying done. We then go off to Valley. And I'm trying to remember, in those days, the holds, it's a big thing about holds nowadays in the Air Force, recently with the training up for Typhoon and Lightning. But at our time, we had some hold, but it's like, if you had a month, 2-3 month hold, it was like, oh my God, that's really bad. So there wasn't that much, but I can't remember. But I went to, I think I was holding at Scampton for a while. I think I might have done. So I went to Valley, and I started Valley April 85. So I'd just finished the Five Nations. And so they put me on the first course after the Five Nations finished. So the Air Force were thinking about how to get me through. So I got my first cap while I was at Cranwell doing basic flying training. I could talk about that later on. We'll talk about rugby because they put me on. They paused my flying training for about nearly 2 months while I played for England the first year. Then the following year when I played again, because I was a bit more mature in flying and stuff like that, it was just subsumed into my flying. We started at April over in Valley, and my rugby pretty much stopped because by that stage it was like I'm way over the other side of the country and I've just started a new course. There was supposed to be a tour to, so that was 85. So that was South Africa. It was 84. I think 84 was South Africa. That's right. And because I was going through flying training, that was an easy get out because at the time South Africa was banned from sports because of apartheid. But England rugby still went, and it would be a bit embarrassing for HMG if a serving officer went to there. So it was right. Okay, he's busy doing flying training, so he can't go. That was an easy get out. And then the following year, 85, they went to New Zealand, but I was doing my advanced flying training at Valley. So again, it was an easy just concentrate on that because otherwise 4 weeks out of a 6-month training, that's too much to handle. It was fine by me at the time, because everything in my mind was focused on becoming an RAF pilot. That's my main drive.
Yeah, you're in the Hawk, we're at Valley.
But it's my job.
Fly.
That's the thing.
And it's your job.
It's my job. Whereas playing rugby was a hobby. So that's why that was the main driver. So I went to Valley and started learning the Hawk. And the Hawk is, you asked me about leading into being in the military, into the Air Force, but my favorite aircraft is the Hawk. It's not the quickest by any means. If you go up to 40-odd thousand feet, point at the ground, put the throttle on, you'll eventually go supersonic. But it's probably not as, it's nowhere near as maneuverable as, some of the more modern aircraft. But for what it does, how it does it, how safe it is, you can do anything with it, and it behaves itself. It will depart to various things, but it's very easy to get out of it. And so it's a fantastic aircraft. It's still nimble and it's still great, and you can fly around at 420 knots. And so, you start flying, you do sims and you go flying, and then you're solo, which I think was probably about trip 10, I think, might be earlier. So once you could, master landing in an instrument approach, and you could show the instructor that you could land the aircraft, literally your solo was get airborne, go once around the island at 2,000 feet, break into the circuit, couple of circuits, land. That was your first solo. So rorting around Anglesey at 2,000 feet. And of course, the difference between the Jet Provost, which had quite high sort of combing, and it was low level was max 300 knots, to suddenly get into this Hawk where it felt like the canopy came down to here, and suddenly you were out. And, felt as if you had a cabriolet type thing. The canopy was so much space and light. And obviously the engine had a bit more poke than it did in the Jet Provost. So that was a big step up, and it was great. So we flew around, so we did about, I think it was like 70, 80 hours, something like that. And now we were doing advanced flying training. So still more formation. We're flying at low level, so clear ourselves down to 500 feet at low level at that speed. And you're doing, learning how to navigate at that much faster speed, doing formation, and obviously illegally. But I remember you're not supposed to go across things, but we you're doing Vic formation. So Vic is lead aircraft and 2 aircraft either side, or you can be echelon, which is obviously in the same direction, left or right. But in Vic, you've got 2 students on an instructor. I remember. He flies around and you're slowly trying to get in position. And when he feels confident that you guys are hanging in there, every now and then we did either a barrel roll or we did a loop-the-loop. And of course, you're just looking at the aircraft staying in position, and you sort of feel yourself going up and going, he's going for a loop, I can't believe this. And, I can remember thinking, oh my God, I've just done a loop in a formation, like my mini red arrows type thing. I mean, very mini. But I can remember that exhilaration doing it, because it was still a red and white Hawk, Raspberry Ripple Hawk.
Because if there's rugby listeners, and this may attract rugby listeners, they may not know that the Hawk that we're talking about is the current Red Arrows aircraft, right? Mm. So that is essentially what you're flying at that time.
Yes, it is, and it's the only unit that's flying the Hawk now. So the 100 Squadron was, and that's one of my squadrons I flew the Hawk until about 2-3 years ago, and that disbanded. And so all the Hawks that are there now are basically just keeping the Red Arrows from running out of spares and all that sort of stuff. So the Reds are the only people that fly the Hawk now in the Air Force. And
may I ask, this might be immaturity coming out in me, when you're solo in a Hawk, so you've been given permission to go up for the first time on your own in a fast jet, the Hawk, how difficult is it to remain professional and not get overwhelmed by the experience?
Well, it's not as if it's our first trip ever. So it's not difficult, but there is a sense of elation because suddenly you're on your own. So you can shout at yourself, expletives, and I can't believe I'm doing this. And I think it's like that going around the whatever, but you recognize you're in charge of a £4 million piece of kit. And of course, people are watching you. It is your first solo. So it's not as if they let you off and then just forget about you for 10, 15 minutes. Air traffic are monitoring you. I think, did we do it in that? I can't remember whether it was just a set alone trip or whether we did dual, because in the Jet Provost, you literally fly some circuits and then eventually the instructor say, right, okay, land off this one, taxi in, okay, just stay here. He would then unstrap, set the seat safe for single flying, and you're sitting there going, oh my God, I'm going solo. So he's says, right, okay, Underwood, so happy, just go off, just do one circuit, land, come back and pick me up. And that's what he did then. The Hawk, I don't think we did that. I don't think we opened the canopy while the engine was still running. Possibly, I can't remember now. But I don't think we did. So it was designated. So it was a set flight. So it wasn't as if you went from dual to solo. You just like, okay, you're good enough. We're going to send you solo the next trip. And then you go, you walk out, sign the aircraft, walk out, do it, fly. It's so exhilaration because there's nobody in the back telling you what to do. So there is also a sense of, right, I'll say concentrate. So there is nobody else that can, save you or pull you out if anything goes wrong, if something happens. So concentrate and, do it professionally. So it's a mixture of those two things.
And everything's happening so much faster as well.
It is happening much, and that's one of the reasons why they send you around the island as opposed to just doing a circuit. It's like, go around the island and get that first adrenaline out of the way, and then you come back in the circuit and then do what you know you can do.
That attracts a lot of, and it's not only air traffic control looking, but people on the ground, because that area does attract so many spotters.
Otherwise known as grockles. We used to call them grockles, just spotters around. And they used to be very close. I mean, you could literally, where the perimeter track was, a bit of grass and then a fence, and then they'd be sat on various things. The odd kids throwing stones, which wasn't a great idea, but hey. It's great to see. They love watching the planes coming in, landing, because they're so close to that, depending on which runway we were on, because there were 3 runways at Valleys you could use. And so it's interesting. And so especially in the summer months, there'll be quite a lot of people there.
Yeah, I'd like to go up. I've never been, but I'd like to go up because they still do it even today. And then from there to, what's the next step? So
obviously you get through Valley, and the important thing about Valley is at the end of that is when you get your wings. So it's a pivotal, monumental period for us as aircrew, especially pilots. At the end of the course, you pass your FHT, bang, that's it. You've got your wings. Now they're not guaranteed on your on your chest. I'll explain why in a minute. But you've got them, and you can start walking around. Because before that, we're flying around flying suits and in our uniform with our jumpers and number ones, which is our parade dress. We've got no brevet on there at all. So the day that we've passed that, and then as we do, we've got a wing ceremony at the end of it. So at the end of that, there's a wing ceremony. My mum, our family came down, and they came down to stay the night. The next day was a wing ceremony, so we're all dressed up in our number ones. We went up on stage and we presented with our wings, and so we had a bit of a Velcro patch, and they stuck it onto our chest. And so, the sense of pride of what we achieved over the last 2 years, having gone through basic and advanced to now get your wings, huge, massive. And you see your family, coming to see you get your wings. So it was great. It was great. But the thing was, what was interesting is that I actually started the next course already. So I got to the end of, getting towards the end of Valley, and it was looking like I was going to pass. So as soon as I finished the course, so they accelerated me to a certain extent through that. So with summer months, it's much easier with that weather factor. So they accelerated. So I finished, one of the first to finish all my training, and I passed my FHT. So I was one of the first on my course to get my wings. And then virtually, I was sent off down to Chivna, because I was at Chivna doing the TAC weapons course at RAF Chivna in Barnstaple, North Devon. And I turned up the first day in my uniform and I had no wings on. Flacker, I can remember him, Flight Lieutenant Flack. He said, "Where's your brevet?" I said, "Well, I haven't got them presented yet." I said, "Sod that for a game of soldiers, go and sew them on." Okay.
Oh, they wouldn't have you there without the wings?
They said, "Put your wings on, because you're on this course now. You should have your wings." I said, "Okay." And officially, I'd been given them yet.
Yeah.
But I'd passed the FHT final handling test. So I started Chivna, very very minimal ground school, because obviously it's the Hawk, just talking about the weapon systems and various things, and then we dive straight into it. And so the first thing they do is get you into low level, and then you are clearing you from, so like trips 2 and 3, I think 2 and 3 were the same. It was a low level somewhere, land, sort of a lunch stop, and then a low level back. And in that, they would clear you from 500 feet down to 250 feet. So we didn't talk about it before, so people don't know low level. Low level in our flying system is anywhere below 200 feet, 2,000 feet outside of controlled airspace. So any MATSs or, danger areas, of all that sort of stuff. So it's below 2,000 feet. But when you talk about low-level flying per se, the Air Force operate in training at 500 feet. When we're cleared in peacetime in this country, 250 feet. There are certain areas in Wales and Scotland where you can actually do ultra-flow flying, where you can fly at 100 feet off the ground. And in wartime, there's no limit. I mean, you've had John and Joe, and they've experienced that, especially John, obviously with his experience. Mm-hmm. He's flying at 0.6, or, he would talk. It's like you can go as low as you want, and they use the sphincter factor to work out how low you want to go. As long as you didn't hit anything, you were fine. There's no limits. But in peacetime, we've got 250 feet for obvious reasons, for animals and objects and various things. So one of the first things you do when you go to Chivna is you get low down at 250 feet. And when you go there, you start learning about low level, tactically hitting targets, and you start flying in pairs and learning how to then maneuver in pairs such that you can evade at low level. So you have to stay hinged up. And so what happens when you turn and all that sort of stuff? You start doing air combat, so one-to-one, so Maverick type stuff. Then you start doing weapons. So you start learning how to, so we have a Aiden cannon stuck on the bottom of the jet, so 30 mil, and you fire bullets at a target, 10 degree dive. You're dropping bombs on a dive or a flat. So if you're doing level bomb, 100 feet across Pembrey Range, which was just north of Barnstaple, up near Llanelli, South Wales. And then air-to-air gunnery. So you go off and fire a flag and try and hit a flag. So that was the uplift then, going from, so basic was learning how to fly. Valley was learning to fly in a modular jet, fast jet type scenario. And then TAC weapons learning how to fight. And so that was more of a 60-hour sort of course for that one. And the reason why I was there early was because they wanted me to start in September, sort of late August, early September, because they wanted me to finish in time for the next 5 nations. So literally the end course for that was sort of like early, mid-January. And so I finished Chivna. My last couple of trips was in early stages of January, finished that. And then the 5 nations started in February. So I got to the end of, I actually got to one, I failed one trip coming in through very badly, and they put me on review. And so, you're on view, they're checking you up and whatever. So for some people, that's the sort of, the light buffet with regards to potentially getting chopped. And I managed to keep flying, got myself through it, and successfully got out of it. And they gave me a certificate saying you've successfully, managed to get yourself off review and pass the course, which is a nice little thing. And so you have a role party at the very end of it. So it's just purely just us and the instructors in the bar. And there's various ways of doing it. You either get told, you can just keep it simple. We decided, it was just not long after Deer Hunter came out. So anybody does another film, obviously there's a very famous bit in the middle of it where they do Russian roulette. It's completely, yeah. So what we decided to do was we were going to do beer roulette. So we had a sort of a wine wooden bucket thing that we covered the cans with paper, so they hid whatever the aircraft was. And then, so there's 6 at the time. I think it was like GR1 at the time, GR1, F3s, Buccaneer, Jaguar, Harrier, Phantom. I know there's one more. Can't remember now. There was 6 anyway.
Not a Hawk.
No, there's no aircraft flying the Hawk front line. So what they did was the instructor would go, okay, who is it? It's Blogs. Okay, so they go, and they'd shake one of the cans up. And so literally you went and went, oh, okay, which is that? That's the Buccaneer. And then depending on whether it spat at you or whether it sprayed over you, depended whether that's aircraft. That's the way we did it. So everyone went, oh, I want to fly. So for me, I went and pulled the Jaguar out and didn't pop or something like that. I went, no, I think so. I was wanting to go Jaguar. I had a good finish, but I got two 1s or something like that for most of the trips. The last one I got 2 rather than 2-1. And then the last, and I pulled the Tornado GR1 out and it didn't go off. And I thought, oh, maybe I've got Jaguar. And I got there going, oh, no, you're doing Tornado. So I found a Tornado. I mean, I was a little bit disappointed, but to be honest with you, I passed the course and I was going fast jet. So I was really, really pleased about all that. And so that was it. I was posted GR1s.
That's a brilliant story. Getting from these flights we were talking about to Malaysia to wanting to see how it looks out the front to now you're a Tornado pilot.
So was sort of like, obviously I recourse, so it was a bit longer, but late 83, early 84 to then being posted onto Tornadoes 86. So it was 2.5 years, something like that. And I'll tell you I'll tell you a story, because to give you an idea, I don't know whether John and Joe talked about it, but what's interesting is that the final trip that you do at Chivna, John would have done this. Did he get chopped before that? But he would have done it second time around. But the final trip you do at Chivna is, you know the trip's coming up. And basically an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that, before your brief, the instructor would come in. Do you know who you're flying with? And would give you 2 targets. So by this stage, we've got a big map with all the targets on, and you've got photos. So like grain silos in farms would be like missile silos, and certain bridges, and even telephone boxes as certain, sneaky ones or whatever, or certain churches, or whatever, all sorts of different things, all reconnaissance pictures taken, so that every time you had a target, there would be some information with it, depending on your direction and various things. So, you had to work out. So you were given those 2 targets. The instructor would then be your wingman.
Right.
So it was a 2-ship. You were leading a 2-ship. So 2 of you flying a low level as solos. So he acted as your wingman. So he was just compliant. So you had to go, okay, can you go and get the weather brief and sort of stuff. As you start looking at the map, you start looking at the route, you start working out, what your TOT is, time on target. So you sort of have to work all that out. So you used to get airborne out of Chivna, fly straight up to Pembrey Range and do a first run attack onto the target. And then you peeled off that, went into Wales, which is my route, and then you had a TOT on a target, your first target, 2 targets to hit. You had to survive getting shot down by the bounce. So when you did your map, you had to do 1 for the bounce as well. The bounce is the fighter. You had to give him 1, so he knew what your route was and the timings, so he could work out where to attack you. Which I thought was a bit of a bummer, give him a different map, whatever. But anyway, it's all part of the training. You do that, and you just make sure that you try and hit your 2 targets, and you don't run out of fuel. Try not to get shot down too much, and then get back to base without running out of fuel. So literally that was about 55 minutes of just, full on. You're a solo pilot, so 86. So I'd have been 22 by that stage, still. Yeah, 22. That was 23 in June. 22, I was in charge of a Hawk. I had another Hawk as my wingman. We're flying around at low level, so doing 420 knots at 250 feet. So the youngsters amongst you, it's 80 meters. Okay. Or a visual thing for some people is you take a rugby or football pitch and put it on end, you'd fly into the top posts. That's how low you are.
This is insane.
Yeah. So doing 420 knots, so doing 7 miles a minute, and you're flying around and you're being attacked by a bounce. They'll get you off target, get you off your route. You fall behind. You've then got to work out, okay, I'm minute, 20 seconds behind. How do I get that time back? You don't just put the throttle on because that uses fuel. Mm-hmm. You've got to work out how to cut corners and various things using your, brain ticking over all this. You don't keep your eye on your fuel. Make sure you don't run out of fuel to be able to hit your targets. You're avoiding being shot down. And then when the time's right, we bugger off, get back to base and not run out. And all that's done with a Hawk, which literally has got it's got a compass, it's got a stopwatch, and you've got a map with basically one eyeball, a Mark 1 eyeball, as we used to call it. That's all you had. So the proverbial, you're flying around at 420 knots, 250 off the ground, and trying to do all that, and you're holding a map in your hand. Now, take this the right way. Don't mean that I give you carte blanche to go and do what you want, but you can't use your mobile phone in the car when you're driving around at 70 miles an hour. But I'm flying around at 420 knots, and I'm having to use this to navigate and check where I am and try to work out the timings and all that sort of stuff in a map. We're taught how to do it, and there's a certain technique you have to doing it so you don't hit the ground. But the point being is, at that point, when you get to that sort of, I've heard several people say it, and I recognize this, that particular point, you could argue you're probably as the rawest as a pilot, probably at your best, because you've been honed to that particular point. After that, you go and start flying aircraft, which starts giving you, Tornado suddenly gives you all this head-up display and all the information. You've got INAS systems and you've got a moving map display and all that sort of stuff. It starts giving us more information. In other ways, it's difficult to fly. But in the raw flying sense, just flying on a map, compass and a speedo and a stopwatch, that's what you were doing at 22.
Yes, it's difficult to process for me.
For you who've done experience, So Joe would have been the same thing. John would have been the same thing. All of us pilots that went through, that's what you're up to.
It's incredible. It really is. Raw flying, like you call it. And
yeah. I look back now. I'm not trying to be big about it. You look back now and go, oh my God, even I'm sort of thinking, bloody hell.
And you were 22.
Yeah. Because I was young, I didn't go to university, as you know, so I joined slightly earlier than the rest. So, but there were people that joined straight from school at 18, and they would be the same.
There was a reason I didn't want to split. I think we've had to, and I'm glad we did in the end. But split rugby and the aviation element, because I'm wondering whether a lot of this was transferable.
To a certain extent, it is.
Tactically.
Yeah. Tactically, it depends what you mean by tactically, but there's lots of elements of trying to solve problems, trying to think on your feet, under pressure. You've got the physical challenge and, multi-dimensional facet of playing rugby at the highest level, whilst at the same time flying in a jet and trying to do all the different things and make decisions while, lots of different things are going on. So there's a lot of similarities between it. Without a doubt, some of the flying I did later on in my career when I was flying on 100 Squadron, flying on Hawks, and it was my day job, I was 4.5 years on Hawks, you're pulling 6G regularly, when you're flying evasive maneuvers at low level. And people don't realize how tiring that is. I mean, if you watch the Top Gun Maverick movie, a lot of the stuff they did for real. You could tell it was real. And you could see the effort the actors were going through in having to pull the G, and all the G was going on. And for us, you're pulling 6G so that sortie I was talking about, when you are two ship and you're trying to evade, everything was done at 6G. So you turn, went bang, pull the 6G, and your turns were all done at 6G. So for anybody uninitiated, it's basically 6 times everything. So your arms, your head, everything weighs 6 times more. And the thing to try and get around to people is that, but I'm still trying to fight. So I don't just look like that. And, this is looking for, I am literally turning in my seat, trying to look over my shoulder, back past my, tail to try and see where the guy is to try and monitor it. And I'm moving around and I'm trying to fight accurately. And of course, your arms are weighing 6 times more. So you're trying to hang on to the throttle in the stick and trying to, finesse that maneuvering whilst at the same time pulling 6G. So all that has and so it's tiring. It is very tiring pulling 6G physically. And so there is a bit of cardio going on at the time because you're panting quite heavily after you've done a few of those.
I bet. And yeah, I agree with you. The film's brilliant, but...
Oh, there's a but.
The average Joe isn't going to appreciate, you've explained it, the amount of time and effort and also the concentration needed for that raw flying element. Yeah. So yeah, you've got Hollywood, but they're doing it for real. And these are, Joe spoke about Tom Cruise, for example. So an actor that actually does fly and has pulled, I think it was 9G, he's experienced. And so there's years and years of training that go into that moment.
I mean, if you take me from when I first started flying the Jet Provost and you put me in just pull 6G and hold it, if I wasn't trained very quickly, I'd faint. So again, bit of physiology. When you see them fainting, so there's one guy that faints when he's pulling the G, isn't it? The issue there is that the real challenge is between the brain and the heart. So if you don't get the blood pumped from the brain to from the heart to the brain, then obviously it's starved of oxygen. And normal reaction is, starved of oxygen, I'll tell you what, I'll faint, because then you tend to fall flat. So therefore, getting the blood from the heart to the brain is much easier. That's why you faint. It's just a simple thing, flat, no pressure getting the blood from heart to head. But obviously, if you're flying around or doing anything, it's obviously has a bit of a problem.
Yes.
So one of the things that we do when we start flying is, when we start flying around, we didn't pull 6G when we first started, but we started pulling a bit of G. So if you go into a 60-degree angle of bank turn and just hold level 60 degree, you'll pull about 2G just to maintain level and turn 60 degree. Okay, so that gives you an idea. So if you want to snap the turn so you make the turn much quicker, then obviously you pull into it. And obviously you need to think about going more than 60 degrees, otherwise you start climbing. So there's all that sort of dynamics going on. So that's increases. So you virtually go to 90 and pull, so it's flat. And so you're trying to work out that when you're learning how to do it, you slowly progress up to it. So we used to do these things called max rate turns, where they literally went up to 15, 20,000 first. You tip in, pull, and they'd ask you to pull the 6G, and they're trying to teach you how to get to the light buffet. So when you pull, you've obviously got the magic stuff that happens over the wings. If you pull too much, breaks the airflow up. And so what tends to happen, it tends to go and disturb the tail rudder and the elevators at the back. And so what you tend to find is on your rudder, if there's a bit of turbulence from that, you'll feel it on the rudder. So that's what we talk about is the light buffer. You can either feel it or you can feel it on the rudder pedals as well.
Okay.
So that's the sort of thing that we're getting that sort of finesse and feeling from. You can just feel it on the rudder pedals, and then when you're just feeling it in the controls. And so you're trying to hold that, but of course you're trying to pull 6G, you're trying to keep accurate, you're trying to keep the speed, you're trying to rotate and keep going into that turn. And so everything keeps maneuvering. So you go off, you get in. So you go in, you go 5 degree, you go 7G, whoa, too much, and all sorts of stuff. So when you're first learning, you're in and out, all this sort of stuff. And you do that and you go, okay, stop, relax, go up, stop, and do it again. Oh my God, I can remember that. You finish that flight, you're knackered. It's like doing a flipping training session.
I was about to say, yeah.
And what it is teaching you. So so one of the misnomers that people have is they think we've got G pants on. So in the Jet Provost, you don't have them. Okay, you don't have G pants. It's not to get the Hawk. So you learn to fly with G pants. And the G pants start to inflate when you start getting to 2G plus. So when you start doing a 6G turn, you start them to inflate. It gives you an idea that's roughly 2G. So another way of learning sort of from just senses and feeling, you can automatically. But people think that the G pants force the blood. It doesn't. What you have to do is, there's several things. You've got to tense all the muscles in your body that you can to try and force the blood up. So part of that is obviously the big space of your lungs. So you hold your breath, which inflates the lungs, which means that you can force against that. You then tense all the muscles as much as possible. That can force against it, but also you tense against the G pants. So any of the muscles outside, so your big muscles, that's why if you look at the G pants, they're all up against the soft parts of your muscles, your calves and your thighs, etc. So as they blow up, you can tense your muscles and your muscles tense against the G pants, and that helps to force all that. So
I didn't know that. No.
You basically, they call it an M1 maneuver. It's basically going to toilet maneuver. So you like that to force pressure into your lungs. You're squeezing all your muscles. And that's how you learn how to control it. So the G pant helps you with, I don't know, I think it's like 1.5, 2G potentially. The rest of it's about how you use your technique to force. Many times you're flying, all of us pilots have gone through this. You go into a turn at low level and you can start. So what happens is if you start losing blood out of your head, you tend to start getting this starting to grey out. So you'll start feeling grey out and you start having this tunnel vision. So your vision sort of filters in like this. And if you go too long, obviously your vision goes and you eventually faint. So actually there are plenty of signals coming up. You can feel that sort of coming up and then you tense a bit more and your vision comes back again because blood comes up. So you learn how to do that, over time. You can just tense more and whatever. But that all comes with training, 100%. So that's what I'm saying. For the actors, they would have had some lead into that. But we had lead in from 2.5 years of basic flying training through advanced flying training to flying the jet at Chivna to go into that, whereas they would have had, I don't know, 2 months of flying and leading into it. So I personally give them fair credit, as aircrew, as actors to go and do that, 100%. Yeah,
it was a great movie.
Mm. Oh yeah, I enjoyed it. There's Hollywood stuff to it, but still, it's
one or two.
From a flying perspective, 2, 100%. At the time, 1 was just great, seeing that sort of stuff. They do the military films very well, Hollywood, because they get the chance to go in. They're very good at tying up a relationship with the Navy or the Marines or whatever. And so they get great access and great stuff, whereas we don't quite have that here.
I agree. Did you see active duty?
I didn't see any active duty, no. So to finish off my career, I'm very conscious about, I'm talking for England. So I posted on the GR1 and for a variety of reasons, which I haven't got time to go into, I failed the course. So I did about 14 hours. I didn't go crew solo. I did a couple of trips and didn't come up to the required standard. So they decided to chop me. So that's the term we use in the military. I got chopped from tornadoes. And originally the station commander was said, right, you've been chopped and I've recommended you to go Hercules. And I said, well, look, I'm flying. I'm happy. I'll go Hercules. And then I had a few months off while they were waiting for the thing to come through saying, what's the next job? So obviously the Air Force was going, oh my God, Underwood's been chopped. What are we going to do with him? Where should we send him? And in that time, I was still playing because that would have been sort of late summer. When I was sort of a few months, it was during the summer, so there was not much rugby going on. It was 86, so there was no tour that year. And I was driving around doing various bits and pieces, and every now and then a jet would go over the top of me. I was going, yeah, I don't want to fly Hercules. No disrespect to any of the Fat Albert pilots, seriously, but my dream was to fly Jags. I wanted to go fast jet. I was thinking, oh. And then I got a phone call from a poster and said, right, we're going to send you Canberras at RAF Whitton. Please report to Whitton in October, something like that, or was it September, wherever it was, to RAF Whitton to fly the Canberra. And for me, whilst it wasn't fast jet, it was not far off pseudo type stuff. So I was really quite happy with that. And they sent me there, and I spent 6 years on 360 Squadron. So I was on 360 Squadron, which flew the Canberra T-17. It's differential because it's got lots of bumps and knobs on it. It's Warthog was its nickname because it looked, only its mother would love it. And we were an ECM, so Electronic Countermeasure Training Support Squadron.
Okay.
So we basically flew against all the UK air defence ground environment systems, and missiles and fighters. So all the stuff in there. So it's myself at the front, and you had a navigator and an AEO, and EWO, Electronic Warfare Officer, and he would have all his dials doing band A, band B, C, D, E, bit of Foxtrot as well, jamming different frequencies. So we used to just jam all the radars of missiles, early warning radars, fighter missiles, radars, comms jamming, all that sort of stuff. So we used to do that. So I did that for 6.5 years. Eventually, I got a fast jet crossover, and I was going to go back to the system. So I retired from rugby. I decided to retire from England. So I was 92. And they sent me to 100 Squadron, which was, at Whitton, 100 Squadron used to be the Canberras as well. Then they converted them to Hawks. So I started flying Hawks there. So they sent me to 100 Squadron to do, 6 weeks, fly with them, get yourself back up to speed with the Hawk, and then we'll send you back through the system. And it was like tick, because half the battle is getting back into the swing of the aircraft. I started doing that. My guys in the rugby team were giving me so much grief about, I was 29. Why are you retiring so early? I got on the Hawk, and I loved the Hawk again, reminded me how much I loved it. Having been flying the Canberra, which has got quite high, it's an old aircraft, as you know. I mean, Echo Mike was laid down in 1948, which always blows my mind because it's like 3 years after the Second World War. So one of the Canberras was laid down. It's one of the most, I think one of the most aircraft we've had as an intermediate nuclear type bomber was the Canberras, and it's morphed into so many different variants. We've had so many different over the years. And the first one was laid down this one was laid down in 1948. So I was flying an aircraft, whatever, just 50s, 18 years younger than me, whatever it was. So so I started flying on 100 Squadron, decided, you know what, I'm enjoying this job. So I went to the squadron boss and said, boss, do you mind if I stay, can I stay on the squadron rather than doing fast jet crossover? He said, yeah, sure. So I rang the poster. He's a bit miffed. I said, I got all this to get you across fast jet crossover, but okay, fine. So I stayed. And so I stayed at 100 Squadron for 4.5 years, and it was the best time. So by the time I got to the end of 100 Squadron, I was a pairs lead, I was an authorizer, I was a planner, and just the whole fabric of the squadron, doing everything that you would do. And that period, I was on 100 Squadron from 92 to 96. My kids were born in 1991, so I had 2 kids under the age of 6. Mm-hmm. And we went through England Rugby at probably its most successful for a long period of time, where we won the Grand Slam in 91. We missed out on the Grand Slam decider in 90. We won the Grand Slam in 91, 92, and 95. Won a championship in 93, 94. And we got to World Cup final in 91. At the same time, I was flying Hawks and 2 kids under the age of 6. So I had a busy time, but I was having a great time. At the end of that, eventually, 100 Squadron was a bit of a, got moved around a bit. So we ended up going to Finley for a couple of years. Then we went up to Leeming. I was still living down in near Grantham, and I was still playing at Tigers. So that travel was quite difficult. So in the end, I set us for a move. So I ended up coming out to Cranwell. I ended up doing a ground tour. So I started introducing crew resource management into the Royal Air Force. So as part of that, so I did that for about a year. Then I became station flight safety officer at Cranwell. So that was for 2 years. I ran Cranwell, Berkshire Heath, Newton, Syston, and Scampton, the Reds there. So I did that for 2 years. And then my last tour, I flew the Domini, basically Hawk Siddeley 125, original version, flying classroom basically. And I did that, which enabled me to be able to get my, because it's a ATPL Perf A aircraft. It's just it's just a performance A aircraft. So I could do my ATPL. By this stage, because the decision I made, I knew that it was going to be my last tour and I was going to leave the Air Force rather than stay in. So I decided to get my ATPL. And I'd been jacking up. I was probably going to join BA. And then things took a turn. I didn't in the end, and I went into the consultancy world. But that's my Air Force career. So it's about 3,000 hours, and that's my journey through that flying world.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That's absolutely brilliant. I've enjoyed that. And I mentioned to you, and I mention often on this show, I purposely don't do a lot of research into the guests because I don't want to have any preconceived ideas, perceptions, and I've learned that all firsthand, and I've loved it. And the way you share those anecdotes with us, that's been special. Throughout that, though, I've wanted to just ask how on earth you balanced all of that with a rugby career. And I screwed up with the pro thing. I still don't know. No,
people still, of a certain age, they see the game now and think it's been pro for a long time, but it turned in 95. So I have to, the best way of explaining to people now is when I was, because some people think, did I do the rugby first and then flying later? But no, I did both at the same time. And that's what sometimes people find quite hard to think because they're thinking about it now. So the way I describe it is, at the time, my day job was flying jets for the Royal Air Force. And my hobby was playing rugby. So I did Tuesdays and Thursday nights. I played on a Saturday. And every now and then I played for England at Twickenham. And that's the way it was.
So what, and this is because let me start again. I was going to ask you a bit like the chicken or the egg, what came first, winger or wingman? But that would have potentially skipped the whole, where did the passion for aviation come from? But one day you're walking out in front of 82,000 people at Twickenham. I'd love to know what that felt like. But then at the end of that week, you might be up in a fast jet.
Yeah, I mean, the example I gave, and whenever I talk and people ask me about, there's various questions people say, if you were starting now, would you do rugby or flying? I suspect I'd be rugby because you'd been picked up by rugby slightly earlier than you go into the Air Force. Mm-hmm. So I suspect I would have gone down the rugby route. I was fortunate. I was at a time. I cannot stress how privileged I feel. And it's not meant to be grandstanding or boasting. I did both. Literally, I played in the World Cup final at Twickenham on a Saturday afternoon, 3:00 kickoff. We lost, a bit of a bummer, but I played in the World Cup final, and there's been, 9 so far in history. So that's a highlight. Low light, we lost. But I was away, that World Cup was in the UK and in England in 91. So I was away for 6 weeks or so plus. So away from the squadron. So 8:00 on Monday morning, I turned up for Met Brief, waiting to go and do a QFI ride to be able to clear to say, right, yeah, you're okay, go flying again. So I can go flying again. So in my day, so towards the end of my career, we'd play on a Saturday for Tigers. We'd meet up Saturday night down in the hill at a hotel in Richmond. We'd train Sunday morning. They named the team that night. We'd train on the Sunday morning. We'd go back home. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'd fly. And then Wednesday afternoon, I would then travel down to Harlequins. We'd met on a Wednesday night. We'd train Wednesday night, Thursday morning, Friday morning, play Saturday. We'd dinner at Hilton Saturday night, drive home Sunday, 8:00 Met Brief Monday morning. That was my Five Nations routine. Then the following week was, Tigers, Tuesday night, Thursday night, play Saturday Tigers, then repeat.
That's madness. And a lot of people didn't realise, actually the rugby fans didn't realise that you were in the Royal Air Force. A lot of them wouldn't have known. Some
don't, I still get people, now you recognise me, know who I am, know me as, a rugby player and a reasonably famous one, and then just didn't realise that I had a job in the Air Force. And it's quite interesting because, they referred to, the flying winger and roaring down the wing. And, there's lots of puns that are being used all through my playing career for obvious reasons.
But it's not clicked with some people.
Yeah. And, not just Arden Smith. I can hear some of his commentary, the flying officer, making his way down the wing, all that sort of stuff. But sometimes it just didn't click with people.
And you said relatively famous. You are the current record.
Yeah, I'm modest. I'm modest.
Right?
It's one of my failings. I'm modest,
No, I'd say. Well deserved, and like I said, an honour. I come back to that feeling. I've got no comparison. I get nervous speaking to people on the podcast, regardless of who they are. Yeah. You're walking out from the tunnel to, like I said, World Cup final. That's just, people that are physically there. That's a large number. Yeah. Then this is being televised live. How does that make you feel?
Well, obviously, the thing about if you want to play at the highest level, you somehow have got to either control it or be able to contain any anxiety or apprehension or nervousness you have. You are all of those, but you control it. So if you don't, then obviously your performance will go out the window. Mm-hmm. So there are people who've tried to play at the highest level, and that sort of stuff affects them, and they just will never be seen again. Sadly, that's a fact of life. For a lot of us, there's certain things that we just it's not in us to do what we want to do. So part and parcel of playing at the highest level is learning how to deal with that sort of stuff. So I would never say that I was never nervous or I was never apprehensive. I never felt nervous, but I felt heightened. I knew I was going into something. I knew, because if I didn't, especially in an international match, then I'd be more concerned about me feeling complacent and not up for it. But you're going up for it. You can't not feeling. When you walk into the stadium at Twickenham, whether it's the old stadium or the new one at Twickenham, and the new changing rooms, and then when you go out onto the pitch, and then we'll talk about the bit in a minute, about when you eventually go out so when you go and warm up and stuff, but when you go onto the pitch, when it's just before the national anthem, you cannot but be, being buoyed up for it. If you're not, then you shouldn't be playing the game, really. And some people do, I was somebody who was trying to control everything so that I did not worry about the opposition. From the opposition, I expect the unexpected from them. I had to be on my sharpness. I had to be on top to try and overcome anything, whoever that person was. I try to make sure what I can control is me. So before a game, you speak to any of the players, I felt like most people say I looked like the most laid back and relaxed character, because sometimes I would just go and lie on my bench in the change room and just have a shut eye. I'm not sleeping. It was sort of, and I wouldn't say I meditate, but it was that element of just focusing the mind and just trying to clear all the crap out of your head and just focus on what's coming up ahead. So it was controlling the controllables, which is me. So if I allow my nervousness and my apprehension and my whatever to take over, then that'll disrupt all that element. So that's the way I did it. Now other people, more active, more physical, they shout. Some people, they're being sick in the changing rooms. And each person has a different way of trying to overcome all the different, some of the players, some of my, very good friends of mine who would wake up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning on match day, and they would just wander around aimlessly in the team room because they're just struggling to come to terms with it. They manage it and then go and play. But each of us have a different thing.
This goes to show how much it means to everyone. That's
it does, yeah. Room. The thing about it is that everybody displays that in a different way. Just because you don't necessarily show that you're nervous and all that sort of stuff doesn't mean you don't care, you're not nervous or whatever. It's just that each of us have a different way of trying to control it. Yeah,
and I think there's a point to be made there with, in this day and age, and it won't be any different, you're judged on I'm going to use football time, 90 minutes on the pitch. Mm-hmm. And then you get slated if you don't perform. And that's maybe what people don't really think about, is what is going on before the game, where these elite athletes are in terms of their headspace. There's a lot more coming out about mental health. But as you said, you've got players that are literally being sick, vomiting, because they're so nervous and it's affecting them so badly because it means so much to them. And that's maybe not recognised. I'm glad you've spoken about it and given your experience, because I think actually people need to be more aware of the work that goes into this.
It is. I mean, I don't know whether I'd have enjoyed playing the sport as much in this modern generation. What sports people have to put up with social media is horrendous. It really is. And whereas in the past, it would be people just, thinking comments in their own head or saying a few things to people in the coffee, or in the pub, which is fine. That's their own opinion. But when you actually vocalize it and put it out in the public eye, especially when they can see it, I wouldn't have been able to cope. I would not have been. I'm not on social media much, if at all, and I definitely would not be if I was playing sport at all.
For that reason, because
because in some ways, I said to you, trying to control the controllables. Well, the one way I'd control it is just not look at it, because if you read it, you can't control what's being said and how they said it and what it means, and it just goes through your head, and that would just I just wouldn't.
Well, that's really good advice to the younger generation and maybe aspiring rugby players that are watching right now. And that's something that they're concerned about, Rory, is, I want to play rugby. And they might be getting to that professional level, but are maybe concerned about the scrutiny that comes with it.
Yeah. The thing is, you yourself, anybody who plays at the highest level, you yourself will scrutinize yourself, your teammates, your coaching staff, all the people that you trust in your team environment. We all scrutinize ourselves. It's all about how we perform as individuals, but also collectively, and how we help each other to get through that time. Some of my, worst mistakes I've made in a rugby pitch, it's been my teammates and my family and, close support that got me through those things. And recognizing just because you make one mistake doesn't mean you're a bad player. But it's trying to come to terms with that sort of stuff and how you deal with it. But when you've got, this white noise of negativity, it's been discussed about a lot, and it's very well out there, and it's something that, as a society, we need to think long and hard how we try and deal with that, because it's not good.
I think you'll probably be a great role model to a lot of the kids with what you've just said. Do you do any support work for, I'd say, grass level rugby at the moment?
No, I don't get involved. I was involved with Tigers on the board as a non-exec director for 12 years, so I got involved heavily with that. I didn't get involved in coaching. If you start getting involved I didn't get in coaching because of a variety of reasons. Proper professional coaching, just because of the timing of me in the Air Force and coming out and my pension and stuff like that. And I stayed out of it, and I went on the board, and I thoroughly, from my perspective as a consultant and running a business, being on the board for 12 years and seeing that side of things and the people that I was on the board with and learning, I learned a hell of a lot from my time there as a businessman and, in running businesses and working with businesses. So I really benefited from that. And that was my choice rather than going to the, low levels. I'd get involved. I'm a VP at Oakham Rugby Club. I'm honorary vice president at life member. So I'm an honorary life member at Middlesbrough Rugby Club, which is the club I started out at. So I do have some touch points, but not full time, because as a businessman at the moment now and trying to run a business and build it and stuff like that, it's a lot of time. I'm a DL over in Leicestershire, involved in a few charities, etc. So I'm not bored, shall we say, at the moment.
Oh, you're a busy man. I wanted to share my experience. It's not that important.
Everybody's experience is important.
You. Well, I'm talking about the rugby because I've said I don't know much about rugby, but said I'd be slated if I didn't talk about it. My experience was from the sidelines watching my mates play for Wallingham RFC. They're London Southwest Free at the moment. Culture is one thing that I noticed most about rugby. The rugby was great, and I watch it and I enjoy watching Six Nations. And there's so many. Actually, I'm just thinking there's so many more questions I want to ask you. But yes, after the games, there was always this brilliant culture. It's a game for gentlemen, I believe. Really, really great fan base. But it was always good fun after a game. Was that also the case at professional level?
Oh, that still hangs. Yeah, still hangs true. You can have a good, physical confrontation, and then afterwards you can go and have a beer about it. 99% of the time, vast majority. So it's still the case. It is about that social side, and I don't want this to become a football versus rugby type debate, because I know that there are people that play football that it is part of the social side that they enjoy about doing it, and it's a great crack with their mates. I'm obviously biased. I've only been involved in rugby. I know what rugby's done for me. I know what rugby has shaped me as a person from my time at Middlesbrough when I was a 16-year-old playing for the first time and going to a senior club and learning how to play as a young adult. It's shaped me as a person who I am, the values of playing rugby and how you play, the physicality. But in the clubhouse, it's, we're all one sort of thing. And obviously part of that is driven by how young kids are brought up through mini rugby and how they behave and how they carry themselves on and off the pitch at all the rugby clubs, which is something I'm very proud of what rugby tries to do.
Yeah, and that's what attracted me to those games that they played at, because it was fun. They say good vibe.
Very good vibe all the way up. To see on a Sunday morning you can drive past any rugby club, and it's just about the same for football. You just drive past any time on a weekend, and there'll just be kids running around, which is fantastic to see. 100% fantastic to see. But see the growth of junior, mini rugby, both boys and girls, from the success we had in the 90s and just continued. There was mini rugby before, but when we played the World Cup and got to World Cup final 1991, there was a real massive surge, and that was a start. And it's carried on, continued with Jono winning the World Cup in 2003, et cetera, et cetera. And it's great to see. And I see so many people talking about mini rugby, how good it is, what they're trying to do and what's happening. Because people forget, they think it's just the sport, but it's more than that. It's the social family side of what rugby's about. And, all those mini rugby kids that go and start playing at 5, 6, 7 or whatever, part of the reason for doing that is obviously passing on to the next generation, bringing them on, imbibing them with the culture of what rugby is all about. But when you get to 17, 18, 19 and kids become adults and they go to university and or find jobs, and if they move out of the area, then part of the challenge for any club is trying to keep the club going, because at the end it's a social fabric of the local community. And so, how do you maintain that if you don't have people still being part of the club, still going on in the nights of the midweek, paying for the beers and whatever, and keeping that social construct going? There are lots of stories I hear about clubs that really struggle, and the clubhouse struggles because they don't think of it like that, and they'll go somewhere to Wetherspoons or wherever, and it really impacts the club in trying to stay afloat. And so part of the infrastructure and keep going for the next generation is a very important thing, and a lot of clubs think about that all the time and how they can keep things going. So it's a real challenge.
Yeah. So message is support local.
Yeah.
And where you can.
And I'll shout out for rugby, but it's across any sport.
Can I ask you what parallels there are between being an England rugby player and being a fast jet pilot? What helped? What were you able to transfer from one to the other?
Well, I mentioned before a lot about the thinking under pressure, applying knowledge you have, keeping cool, that sort of stuff. So a lot of the sort of mental stuff, I think, was very much typical over there. Then a lot of the sort of leadership type aspects of going through the military, officer training. And then as you go through training, that obviously helped you with your mindset around thinking around how you acted and behaved as a leader on a rugby pitch. So there's lots of those in and it's like anything else. You speak to me, you speak to somebody else who's done the same thing or somebody else, because there have been the odd RAF pilots who have played rugby up to a certain level. So they played for the Air Force, but never quite played England's type level. And you'll probably find if you speak to each of them, there'll be some bits that we all agree on, but there'll be certain bits where they've got that more out of it than others, because we're all different. So it's that sort of thing. Which bit? And also to be said, one of the biggest things I got out of it was not so much tangibly what's transferable. The biggest thing I got out of, and I always talk about this from a tripartite way of thinking, is both my family, rugby, and Air Force. And in some ways, rather than thinking they keep piling itself on each other, I always saw it as each of those was an outlet for the other one. So if I got stressed out or difficult or tired from one, the other one would uplift me, bring me down to earth or whatever. So I used it that way as a positive sort of cycle rather than it's another thing to put on top. It's another thing to put on top. So, I have a bad day at work or I'm knackered. then I go run around the rugby pitch and throw a ball around. I've fun with my mates. It's great. You think everything's brilliant. God gift. I'm the wonderful rugby player. Go home. Wife shows a 2-year-old in front of you and says, been puking all day. That brings you back down to earth.
I'm at that stage now.
Yeah, okay. But then, you see the joy of I've got 2 daughters, and seeing the joy of them during that period of them growing up and becoming, human beings as they develop and grow and mature and that sort of stuff. It's a fantastic joy. You put things in perspective. And then, you get up at that 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever, to feed them, or things go wrong or whatever. And it's like, and then I end up flying down a valley in Wales at 250 feet, 420 knots, and going, somebody's paying me to do this. So there's that sort of positive type element that I try and bring into things as well.
Is there anything that I should have asked you by now that I've not?
Oh, crikey, how long have we got? So
well, that's the thing.
The one thing I'll finish off, because you have asked me a question I'm quite finished off, and then I suspect, let's call it a day, because how much are we doing? You're going to have fun editing this, aren't you? Might be a 2-parter, you never know. So it is like, what's it like walking out into the pitch? And it is a hard one to describe. I will not be able to do it justice, but what I say to people is, who's here been to Twickenham? And most people have to put the hand up. So if you've been to Twickenham, and when the England rugby team walk onto the pitch just before the game, so they've done the training and they go back in and they come out just before the national anthems. And when they walk out, or when I walked out, and the crowd erupt when you walk on the pitch, and you're wearing the white shirt with a rose on your chest, and you walk out and you hear that noise and the buzz before the national anthem. What's the buzz like for you when you're in the crowd and you hear that buzz go up and you're going, cheer, that's our team, that's my team, that's the England boys or girls, and they're going to come. That feeling of hair on the back of your neck, because there's this roar of, obviously in Twickenham, you've got 82,000 people, so 70, 75,000 people are England supporters. And that roar goes up and it gives you that sense and high. Well, just factor that up several times for you wearing that shirt of yours and walking on the pitch onto the hallowed turf and walking to the centre of that cauldron. And that's the best way I can describe to you. It's just whatever you experience plus. And then, when you say, I always struggled to sing the national anthem, not because I was bawling my tears out like Lawrence Delalio, but one of the physiological aspects of nerves and everything is your mouth goes dry for obvious reasons. And so I used to struggle. So it was, it's not as if I wasn't suffering nerves.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting there trying to sing the national anthem, and every now and then my voice would catch, because obviously my mouth was so dry trying to sing the national anthem. But when you sit there singing the national anthem, you've got 70,000 people singing the national anthem at the same time. Oh, brilliant.
That's wonderful. And thank you on behalf of all the rugby fans, for all the people you played and that loved watching you. And yeah, it could be a 2-parter. We could talk about it a lot more, but sometimes it's just nice to leave things wanting more.
Yeah, I know it is, and it's sometimes it is nice to be able to talk about the flying side, because the vast majority of times I talk about various things. People do talk about the flying, but invariably it talks about the rugby. And so talking to it's one of the reasons why I suggest this, because it's more of an aviation podcast. And to be honest with you, I've only scratched the surface. I could have gone into much more spotter detail around some of the nerdy stuff of how does ejection seat work. The Canberra, it's got a side door underneath the fuselage. You don't get in from the top. The canopy's fixed. All this sort of stuff that you've probably got no idea of, but right. Certain people find that really interesting.
Well, we might have you back. And yes, it is about aviation. I've really enjoyed listening to you. We do have an England shirt. I thought I'd mention it because it's for charity.
Yeah.
We'll ask you to sign that here today, which I'll then frame. And then we've got 2 charities. We've got Prostate Cancer UK and obviously Alzheimer's, which is where we're donating some of the funds from today. And actually the proceeds from that shirt, 100% we'll split them between the 2 charities.
Yeah, that's very kind of you. Thank you.
And so I just wanted to say thank you, an absolute gentleman, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Pleasure, Sam. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cheers.